here. We want to bring in our fight guy, Patrick Assalone. We changed the schedule on him here, and he was kind enough to meet with us. But that's good because the UFC for UFC Vegas 77 is going through a lot of changes as well. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Patrick, we want to start with targettrading.co. Why don't you give us the wins and losses for the week? How you guys been doing this week?
This week, 55 wins, 19 losses, 5 break even. So we had a pretty damn good week.
That's a good week.
Yeah. Targettrading.co. If any of you want to make a change in your life, want a second source of income possibility, even a chance to be your own boss and tell the man that, hey, you don't need him anymore, check us out, targettrading.co on Facebook, Target Trading Academy. Book an appointment, speak to a consultant, see if what we do is for you. We're also starting options now. We had our options guy on your dad's show the other day, probably just to the right of me, which I thought was impossible. But we're starting off with options, which is a gigantic market and gives people even more opportunity to change their lives. So thank you very much, Jeff.
55 wins. That's an incredible week. Dad, I know your listeners all the time are giving you feedback on how incredible targettrading.co has been for them in their life.
I tell you what, if I've got about over 100 now students that are in his program. I've told you this story before. I'll be out at a ball game or something and somebody will hear me on the phone and they say, aren't you John Fredericks? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, hey, I listen to you every day. I'm in target trading. About 4 or 5 people have sought me out. I've yet to get a complaint. And when you're in the radio, I mean, and you get so many ways to reach me. If we promote something and people are unhappy with it, they will tell me. Yeah, they will tell me. So I've not had one complaint. I mean, it's not for everybody. No, Ann says it's hard. It takes a lot of discipline, but she went through it. But we have never had anybody say, hey, I didn't get my money's worth, or it didn't work for me, or anything. And, normally you'll get that on something. But look, it's been a tremendous opportunity for many of our students. And look, you go 55 and 19. That's a pretty good record. Thing I love about Patrick is the transparency of it. He tells you by week, by month, and why did TD year to date where his trades are with his students are now professional traders. So you can only do that when you have a winning record, right? Otherwise you look bad. So good job, Patrick.
Thank you. Very
tougher
much.
to be transparent if you're taking L's all the time. But that point about discipline is what's most important. And that's what we're here to talk about on the show for the next 15 minutes is these UFC fighters. One of the reasons I'm sure that targettrading.co is so successful is because Patrick brings that kind of fighting training mentality to futures trading because of the amount, so much discipline that it takes to do that. Patrick, a champion boxer and fighter here. So Patrick, let's talk then, and Nate, a little bit of UFC Vegas 77. I just want to start because Patrick emailed me earlier. There's just been a lot of movement with the card. So Patrick, can you kind of explain what's going on with UFC Vegas 77? This isn't like a big pay-per-view, so a lot of times there'll be a ton of different movement.
Well, what I can tell you is this. Last night, and probably right before I went to sleep, there was one card. When I woke up this morning, there was another card. And don't get me wrong, this kind of stuff happens all the time. We were generally left with the Holm Bueno Silva fight, but there's also somebody else, Jack Della. We'll just call him Jack Della because it just gets very, very long with all the syllables and the rest of his name. He flew in from New Zealand. This poor guy has two opponents changed on him since he's been here. And then finally, Dana White has to go find a guy who's never fought in the UFC before to fight him, okay? And the reason I'm talking about this is twofold. It's amazing to me how they must have a bench 50, 70 guys deep in every weight class signed to a contract, and no one wants to step up on national television and fight. This is shocking to me because generally, let me tell you how this goes. They start going down the list of trying to find people. And let's say Jack Fredericks is the first guy on the list, and he's the number 14 fighter because everybody else has fought They're on medical system, whatever it is. Okay. Jack makes 15 grand to show. They're going to double your show appearance and guarantee you more fights because you're going to step up at the last moment and do something. Nobody's doing this. And this is why I have almost come to despise certain parts of this business, because when I was fighting, if they would have asked me to do that, I would have said, look, I'm probably not going to be able to make weight on a day's notice, but I'll fight him for free if you give me a 3-fight deal where this kid, Haraz is stepping in to fight Jack Della, Harfez, excuse me. So I'll tell you one thing, and this is the fight that I'm going to take. I'm going to pick Harfez in this fight because he is an underdog. You can watch all the film on him you want. He's nasty, he's arrogant, and he's just a jerk. And I love him. He's going to come right at Jack Della. He's going to try to take him down, and he's going to try to beat him up on the ground. Jack Della is very, very powerful striker, deceptively powerful. I've been watching his fights for months, trying to figure out how he's knocking people out because it looks like he's got pillows on his hands, but he is knocking people senseless. So I think it's Jack Della's coming out striking. Harfez is going to try to take him down. Harfez gets a little goofy with his punches, starts throwing roundhouses to set up his takedowns, but I like that. I think it's a tough kid, and if I were going to take one fight on this card, that's the one I'm picking.
Big plus 440 dog there for Basil Hafez as a guy who's stepping in to a spot.
All right, what's the name? Look, I got to write this down because now I can actually bet these fights because I'm back in Virginia. What's the name of this again? I want to write it down.
Basil Hafez. BASSILHAFEZ.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Anytime you want to just take notes during the show, feel free to call out. So, yeah, Basil Hafez plus 440. Look, I'm going Jack Della with this because I've been burned too many times with these huge underdogs where you're thinking, oh, well, I mean, it's the UFC, anything can happen. And then these guys walk into this situation and just get burned in the first round. So I always love Patrick's optimism for these guys. I think it's that fighter mentality in him where he's like, oh, this guy can really go after it. It's like a younger me. I'd step in there and I could win a fight like this. And then these guys lose in like 2 minutes. So I'm going with Jack Della here, but I love Patrick's optimism.
They could win.
Yeah, that's true. Nate, you got a thought on this fight before we move to Holly Holm?
I agree with Patrick.
Y'all going with the dogs.
Yeah, and me and Patrick have been hot lately while you've been away.
We were 4-1 last week, Nate.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, I mean, I like Hafez too for a lot of the reasons that Patrick sort of said. I mean, I think that Jack Della Maddalena, like the changing of opponents has to be frustrating, especially after you fly to the Apex from Australia.
It is.
He's been, he's had a fight basically for like the last 2 weeks, like standing date. I think that like the cut is probably getting annoying and probably sort of starting to take a toll on his body. If Hafez makes the weight, this just looks like a bad stylistic matchup too. And Patrick sort of alluded to that. It looks like the weakest part of Della Maddalena's sort of fighting style is grappling, and Hafez is obviously a black belt in jiu-jitsu who sort of specializes in grappling. So if he can get his hands on Della Maddalena, I think that this could be, a pretty big upset fight. It's just a matter of if he can get his hands on him. But at plus 440, like I'm all about that. If you like him to win inside the distance, which he probably almost certainly has to win, that's even better odds. That's like 650. So, I don't hate a little sprinkle on Hafez to win inside the distance either. I think if you think that he's going to win, it's probably not going to go to a decision. He probably needs to finish it inside the distance. So I sort of like that bet as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, because the problem with Hafez can't upset a major favorite if it goes to decision. That rarely ever happens. It would be like a major controversy unless it was just so obvious. So if you like Hafez to win, most likely he's going to win based on going inside the distance. Yeah, Patrick. And
just alluding to what you had said, to beat Jack Della in this kind of situation by decision, Hafez has to go 10-9, 10-9, and 10-8. He's got to have a 10-8 round in there somewhere that is just such absolute domination that there's no way you can say no. That's the only way he wins by decision. He's going to have to finish this thing. And I'm telling you, Hafez is going to have no problem charging right at him, trying to take him down. That's his game. He knows it. You go with what brought you there. You don't change things in the middle in the middle of your career.
And he's got nothing to lose. And he's
Nothing.
in basically a co-main event. So it'll be fun to watch. Plus 440. Patrick and Nate have been absolutely on fire. Nate's been texting me. He's like, oh, we hit again. Actually, Patrick, last week, Nate texted me. He's like, I need Patrick's number because I'm sitting here grinding on all these fights and we're winning and I don't know who to celebrate with because I only got my guy's email. So,
He emailed me. Yeah.
I emailed him last week. I was like, we did it again.
Yeah, you guys.
I'll give it to you as soon as we get off the show. Or Jack, either way,
yeah, we probably need to trade phone numbers there for some of that. So let's talk a little bit now. Holly Holm and Mayra Bueno Silva. This is another sort of weird fight. Holm, 42 years old, this is a championship fight after Nunez retired. She's a little past her prime, but she's kind of come back with a couple wins here. And Mayra Bueno Silva's much younger and has never really been in this position before, but she's won some pretty big fights that have put her in a position to now challenge for the belt or take the belt. So we'll start with Patrick. Bueno Silva is plus 145 in the odds. Holm, a slight favorite at minus 170. I mean, that's kind of a big favorite for a main event there. What do you see in this fight? What do you like?
I'm going with Holm, and here's the reason why. We talk about age and we talk about injuries. Age doesn't really bother me. Injuries do. Give you an example. Last week, I was rolling with a bunch of guys, ripped out my rib cartilage. I'm out for 3 weeks. Okay. Well, what does my sister say? Well, you're getting too old for that. Well, for the last year and a half, I've been hammering these black belt kids without a problem and not even trying. So was that age 2? I'm not sure how you formulate this. So Holly Holm, her style, she is, and I hate saying this because it's so cliche in this business. Her fight IQ, I prefer more ring generalship. She can take the fight wherever she wants to go, and really no one is going to be able to stop her. She she's a great takedown defense. She's got great striking, and she can run away at will and make the fight anywhere she wants. Bueno Silva is a one-trick pony. She's got to get her to the ground. She's got to beat her. And this is something people need to understand. You don't have to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu. You don't have to be a national champion wrestler. And you don't have to be a professional kickboxer to win in this sport. Bueno Silva is going for the takedown. All Holly Holmes has to do, stick, move, defend the takedown, keep sticking and moving. If you get on the ground, you're not trying to go submission game with her. Just get up. And she's great at wrestling up and getting away off the ground. Ronda Rousey was a phenomenal ground player, an Olympic judo player. That's on the same kind of level as Bueno Silva. And look what happened to Holly Holm. Or I should say, look what happened to Ronda Rousey. She got her clock cleaned. I'm going with Holly Holm. It's just the experience, the lack of damage she has taken, and just the way she can take a fight anywhere. I think it's too much for Bueno Silva to handle.
Holm looked really good in her last fight as well. I mean, I don't think 42 is that old to be fighting. The more you watch these, at least for me, I really think these fighters sometimes reach their prime at like 36. I mean, it's for such a punishing physical game, the fact that these guys really hit their prime so late is pretty incredible. Now, Nate, what do you think? Are you with Patrick here? You like Holm, or are you maybe looking at the dog?
I kind of like the dog here. I kind of like Bueno Silva. I think that Holly Holm, the fight IQ stuff, that can't be argued with. But I know that age is just a number, but I do worry that, even if, the grappling stuff, age, doesn't matter, but I worry about the speed and just sort of not being quite as quick reacting. Bueno Silva just seems like this is another one that just feels like kind of a tough matchup. And I wonder what Holly Holm is going to do. I have some reticence with Bueno Silva, but I'm also wondering what Holm will do. And maybe we can talk about this a little bit. Sure. So in her last few fights, Holly Holm has really sort of stepped up for someone who's for so long in her career known as a kickboxer, sort of striking specialist. She's trying to take people down all the time now. In her last like 3 fights, she's averaged like 3 takedown attempts per round. So like 1 a minute. Bueno Silva's shown quite a bit of willingness to just get taken down because her grappling game is so good that she's just like fine just letting people take her down, like fine losing that point, just to get it to a place that she's really comfortable rolling around. And I wonder if Holly Holm will sort of oblige her by trying to take her down and sort of get a little bit too cute, and then get submitted by Bueno Silva once they get down there. That's sort of, I guess, my concern for Holly Holm is that she tries to shoot these takedowns. Bueno Silva lets her, and then she submits her.
My opinion on that, and you've got to validate it, because, and this had happened before in a fight with a friend of mine who, it was a world championship fight in the UFC, and I had told him, if you want to beat this guy, punch him in the face. Well, what does that mean? Because he thinks he's a great striker now. For some reason, punch him in the face. He's not a great striker. You're going to beat him. Don't go to the ground with him. He punched him in the face, knocked him out. Fight was over. Okay. A lot of these people try to change their game halfway through. If Holm is serious about winning this fight and about making a world title run, she's going to shift and move. She's going to block takedown attempts, and she's going to strike this thing out. If she's going to try to get cute by half, she loses, because now you're going into the lion's den, and you don't do that kind of stuff in pro fights. You fight at your strengths. You stay away from your weaknesses, and do not make mistakes and give somebody something that they can beat you with.
UFC Vegas 77. Patrick likes Holly Holm for the main event. Nate likes Bueno Silva. I'm going to go with Patrick with the Holm as well. We want to thank all of our guest contributors today. Patrick Assalone from Target Training talking fighting with us. Dan Angel from Godzilla Wins talking baseball. Nick Hahn and Daryl Wood talking some Colonial Downs. That's where Dad is right now at Colonial Downs. He's going to walk up to the window here soon, place his bets. We just want to thank everybody for such a wonderful show. We'll be back here next week to talk even more sports in the dog days of July. Go to GodzillaWins.com, GodzillaWins.com for all of your sports analysis and predictions. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
And follow my picks today on Twitter, Godzilla Wins Big, at Godzilla Wins Big. Shout out, Michael Coleman just got promoted to our director of operations, figured out the camera. So now when you go to Get Her Live, you get to see everybody on the panel. And once again, my son, Jack, I love the clean shaven look, man. You look fantastic. We'll see you next week.